How's it going, Misfits family, here on another beautiful Friday? And it's the USC Pregame Show alongside Eric Lambkins, otherwise known as E. Lamb. I'm Jude Reynolds O'Conius. And man, USC back in the AP top 25. They fill in at number 20 after a big win, 31-13 versus the Michigan Wolverines last Saturday. But you got to forget about that because this Saturday is an even bigger game. The USC Trojans go on the road to face number 13 Notre Dame, and it should be a good one. It should be a good one. Notre Dame has had USC's number the past two seasons. They're on a 2-game win streak, and the last time these two teams were ranked was a home game for Notre Dame, which USC got crushed 48-20. But before we go into this Notre Dame game, quick takeaways from that Michigan game, Eric.
You know what? I was absolutely wrong. I said that they would not be able to stop the run, and lo and behold, did Mr. Tompkins make me eat my words. But I remember texting you during the game. If this is what it means for me to be wrong, I will gladly accept it.
Yeah, and you know, one of us got to be wrong. I mean, one of us had to be wrong. I picked USC, you picked Michigan. But you know what? We're both happy because USC is 5-1. They're 2-1 in conference play. Like I said, they're back in the AP top 25. And I think it's important to note before we go any further in this game, there's going to be a lot of weather. There's expected heavy rain showers, potentially thunderstorm, which we could see maybe a delay of the game. We already saw that with the Purdue. We saw a lengthy delay in that one earlier this season. So that is just something to keep an eye out on pretty much to the lead up of kickoff, which is 4:30 Pacific time, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. It is going to be played in South Bend, and it is now the battle for the Jeweled Shillelagh. So we'll see which one gets it first. But as we move forward, typically on this show, we do kind of, a moment in time of the specific date of when a game's being played, but we're going to switch it up. This is an age-old rivalry. It's the 96th meeting between both these teams. So Eric, in your whole life, what is your favorite USC Notre Dame memory?
Man, you know what? I don't have all this gray hair for nothing. We got to go back 20 years. 31-28, inches from the goal line, 7 seconds left in Notre Dame Stadium. Pete Carroll, the coach, Matt Leinart under center, hikes the ball. Reggie Bush pushes him into the end zone for the victory. Hands down, my greatest and seminal Notre Dame USC quintessential moment. That's it.
Yeah, the 20th anniversary this Wednesday. I think I was maybe 1 year old when that game happened. So unfortunately, it can't be my favorite memory. I did go back and watch the highlights of that one. Just an absolute classic. Hopefully we get that on store this weekend. But I personally have to go with my freshman year at USC. Ranked USC played against, I think it was number 6 at the time, USC played against number 10 Notre Dame. And I truly believe it was Caleb Williams' Heisman moment. He had his Heisman game versus UCLA, but his Heisman moment was his 19-yard run in the third quarter where he pretty much juked out all 11 defenders on the Fighting Irish defense. It would lead to a score to put the Trojans up 31-14. But I was at that game, just the experience of being at that game, having a top 10 ranked win at the Coliseum was electric. And this past weekend was also being electric in the stands, seeing USC top number 15, Michigan, who's no longer in the AP poll. But yeah, I think that's my favorite memory. I wish I could have, remembered the Bush push. But unfortunately, my parents didn't have me, soon enough, I should say. But moving on, because you got to wonder, who is this number 13 Notre Dame Fighting Irish team? Well, they're 4-2 on the season. They're currently on a 4-game win streak. And, I don't want to get controversial here, but number 13 in the country for no ranked win so far. But I think what you'll notice about this Notre Dame team is they're very balanced, right? They have a redshirt freshman gunslinger, CJ Carr, who's been highly effective. And to be honest, as a freshman quarterback, has one of the more beautiful arms and accuracies I've seen out of really any quarterback in college so far this season. He has a 66.5 completion percentage and 83.6 QBR. And compared to other teams, they kind of do it with a collection of receivers. Jordan Facian, Malachi Field. And, historically, Notre Dame's offensive line has always been good. They've produced talent like Zach Martin and other guys along that same line. And they've allowed 9 sacks through 6 games, but it was truly those those first two games against Miami in week 1, they allowed 3. They allowed 2 versus Texas A&M in week 2. And since that, they've only allowed 4 sacks through 4 games. So the offensive line has obviously seen better play, but the competition hasn't been as great, right? Now, Eric, I want to talk running back core that, honestly haunted USC last year and potentially could do the same this year.
You know what? This Notre Dame two-headed beast with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, these two dudes can scoot. I want to say Mr. Love has 530 yards, 8 touchdowns on the year. Jadarian, he has 422 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's the bigger home run hitter. He's averaging 6.7 yards per carry. He's had a 100-yard kickoff return this season. Listen, if the Trojans fail to dominate and control the line of scrimmage, this game right here is going to get out of hand pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I mean, totally. We'll talk a little bit about that later, of just what the USC Trojans have to do to stop that Russian attack. But you kind of look at his defense. This is one of the better defenses in the country. They allow 28. They've only allowed 28.8 points per game. It was very good against the run, going into last week's game. And walk-on freshman, walk-on redshirt freshman, I should say, King Miller was the king of the game. He had 18 carries, 153 yards. He was completely dominant. But also, they create turnovers. They're second in the nation with 11 interceptions. 2 guys that you want to circle in that, defensive back, Christian Gray. He leads the team with 7 pass defenses. And then Leonard Moore, kind of their first team All-American at the midseason, voted by The Athletic, has 3 interceptions on the season. I will say one important fact, and this will go to a later point that I'm going to make, but Mario Carver, the Texas State, for 207 yards. So it's not like these guys aren't, exposable. They are. But obviously, you've got to have a talented receiver, and I think USC certainly does. But moving,
you know what? I think with Mario is going to be a future first rounder. But last time I checked, USC had 2 future first rounders, Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane. I think this game right here, if the weather wasn't going to be an issue, I think this would be a Jacoby type of game. However, I think there's enough that these 2 wideouts are able to do to give them some fits.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think that is, even in the weather, obviously you're probably going to see a lot more of a rushing attack. But even then, your receivers still have to make plays. It's not like you can run the ball 100% of the game. But I think this is the first time these 2 teams have been ranked in a matchup since 2022, or I should say 2023. But it's potentially the last matchup ever. This is the 96th meeting, like I mentioned, and Notre Dame does lead the all-time series, 50 wins, 37 losses, and 5 ties. But this is the final year of the contract between USC and Notre Dame. And it's being reported that, obviously both coaches, as they would like to say, is like they want this to continue. They want the rivalry to continue, to have to create on a contract. But it's an interesting thing this week because Netflix has called USC about inquiring about a one-off rivalry game in 2026, about potentially doing an event that we've seen with, like, for instance, like the Canelo fight, not the Canelo fight, like the Mayweather-Jake Paul fight we saw last year, kind of making it a whole, documentary and all of that. So I'm curious, Eric, and would you like to see this continue on Netflix, or would you like to?
You know what? I would love to see it on a traditional path, because as more streaming sites get involved in major sports, it kind of prices out like the fan. I would love for them to agree on a 50-50 split, home in, home away type of deal. This is Alabama, USC, UCLA. Notre Dame and USC is one of the pinnacle matchups in college football. It has to be here. We need this. This is a game that college football aficionados need.
Yeah. And it's woven in the fabric, like you said, of college football and its history. And it's interesting that I kind of pose that question: the rights to USC and Notre Dame, they would have to play it at a neutral site just because of the home game owning rights between the broadcast partners for Notre Dame and the broadcast partners for USC. I'm going to kind of go on the flip side. I think it would be great to still keep it at the Coliseum, still keep it at Notre Dame, but I think there would be something kind of cool to say, like, you know what? Forget, the Big Ten who puts all these constraints on USC. Forget, obviously they're independent, so they don't really have a conference that puts, restrictions on them. Let's go do it somewhere elsewhere. The Big Ten is always trying to get Las Vegas. Obviously, it would kind of hurt the traditionalism, but we've only seen college football turn away from the traditionalism. Like, I think to put it at a one-game site would kind of be an interesting thing. And to be honest, it would be a middle finger to like the Big Ten and pretty much the Notre Dame athletic department says, you guys didn't want to continue this tradition, so we're just going to take it elsewhere.
It's not a middle finger to the Big Ten. It's a middle finger to the fans. There is nothing more rewarding than going into an opposing team's home, their stadium, their arena, and silencing the crowd. Mm-hmm. That's one of the best things about playing ball is home field advantage. And to take that away, to put it at a neutral site, it kind of diminishes the overall allure and luster of the game.
I mean, they would still have the Jeweled Shillelagh. Like, you don't worry about that. They're still gonna have that center field.
It's not the Coliseum.
No, it is not, and I get that. I totally get that. I think from a Coliseum, I want to be played at South Bend because like USC has an opportunity today to win their first road game at Notre Dame since 2011. Like, to do it against those home fans and shut them up 100%. I agree on that stakes. But talking about the game more specifically, let's hopefully come out with a win and continue what has been a strong October to start the season. So for you, Eric, what are two keys to success for USC to get a win in South Bend?
First and foremost is control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Again, like I aforementioned, if the defensive line isn't able to corral and contain the Notre Dame running backs, it's going to be a long day today. However, I think Lincoln Riley has two X factors out wide to keep things balanced, to keep that offense on the field. That's Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane. I think that he's going to be creative enough today to get Makai Lemon in space. Makai is a tough runner. He's going to break a tackle and break one for a touchdown.
I agree. I think controlling the line of scrimmage is extremely important. And that's honestly why my key to success for USC is more on the play calling. This is not a place to get cute. This is not a place to also be, look, I understand that King Miller, he's just, a redshirt freshman. I also like sophomore Brian Jackson. He had that long rushing touchdown versus Michigan at the end of the game. But this is not where you want to get, cute with the screen passes, the trickery. This is Big Ten football. Go run it down their mouth, get them tired. But I agree at the same time, you want to create opportunities for guys like Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane, but you're only going to do that when they have to respect the run. So I think the play calling is extremely important. Riley on road games, and he crumbles under pressure. Like, it's a fact. His last road ranked game was UCLA, and that's just in Pasadena. Like, that's not traveling far. So
would it be far-fetched to say that today would be a masterclass in clock management weekend?
Would it have to be a masterclass?
No, today is going to be a masterclass in clock management.
I mean, I would hope so. It would be a masterclass, and I mean, it has to be. I mean, I think that's also to my point. Like, time of possession is going to be very important. We talked about Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, those two running backs. I mean, what they did against USC, they combined for pretty much 200 yards last year against USC, and Danton Lynn was the defensive coordinator. So in the game where, like I said, thunderstorm could be coming down, we're going to have heavy rain expected, like it dominating that time offense on the sideline where they have to kind of put on their jackets, they have to stay warm, and you're just continuing to beat down that defense. I think that's extremely vital. But we'll move on as we get closer to the end of the show. But, we've already talked about quite a few talented players that are going to be on both sides of the ball. But Eric, what is your player slash matchup to watch this weekend?
Crazy. I'm looking at Alani Noah. If Alani is able to drive defenders off the ball and create caverns and caves for Wayman and Eli and King to run through, I like USC's chances. So I'm watching specifically
Alani Noah. You said pretty much just a few minutes ago. I think Makai Lemon versus Leonard, their cornerback. I'm sorry, I'm not just Leonard. He has a first name as well. Leonard Moore, I should say. Malachi Lemon versus Leonard Moore, because he talks about it. Look, you're going to take the trenches. You got to dominate the trenches. I think that's very well established. But I agree with you. When you do have to eventually pass the ball, your playmakers are going to have to shine. And Leonard Moore and Malachi Lemon, or Makai Lemon, I should say, were both named to the first team midseason All-American team. So these are two stars going against each other. And I think this is a good matchup, honestly, for Lemon. You know, he's a guy, he's a technical guy. He can work in the slot. Leonard is a little bit more of, a lengthy corner. So I'll be curious to see how that plays out. But I do think when plays are going to be need to be made by talent, it's going to have to be made by Lemon. But as we get towards the end of this, well, USC is not favored in this one. And not just not favored, they're significantly not favored, as Notre Dame is favored by 9.5 points. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, USC has not won a road game versus Notre Dame since 2011. So, Eric, how does this one go?
You know what? I picked against the Trojans last week and had to eat crow because I thought Michigan just had too much firepower. I unfortunately have to pick against the Trojans again. I think it's going to be a 31-28 tightly contested game. I think turnovers and time of possession are going to be a factor. I think Lincoln is going to do his job, but Wayman Jordan has had an issue with 4 points of contact holding on to the ball. And I do think Makai Lemon, in an effort to try to make a big play, will get stripped. So I got to go with Notre Dame, 31-28.
Well, you know me. I'm always going to pick the Trojans. Now, I'm not always going to pick the Trojans, but and this was exactly what we talked about with Notre Dame. They're very balanced. I think Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are going to pose issues. And I'm going to sound like a Cowboys fan that I am. It's a different year. I do think that USC is going to go into South Bend and beat them. I do think this is the turnaround that USC needs and that they are going to show. It's going to be like, I agree. It's not, USC is not blowing this team out of the water, nor is Notre Dame blowing this team out of the water. I'm going to take 30-27. I understand the weather is going to be an issue. But I look at it, they let Purdue score 30 points on them earlier this season. The Texas A&M has scored 41. Like this is a defense that is susceptible to big plays. Now, granted, it's different. The weather, the rain is going to be different. But what we saw from King Miller, I mean, that was a Michigan defense that was pretty good. I mean, they were one of the best in the nation for stopping the run. So I think the combination of King Miller and Brian Jackson, yes, it hurts to lose Waymon Jordan and Eli Sanders a little bit more with that speed department. But I do think these running backs are going to come to play. And look, USC, they understand what is at stake. This is not a game that, look, USC loses this game, they're probably out of the conversation. You can't lose 3 ranked games and expect to make the college football playoffs. So they understand what's at stake. So I'm out by tomorrow, 4:30 p.m. It's the USC Trojans facing off against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The question will be, who will be taking home the Jeweled Shillelagh? Clearly, Eric has the Notre Dame Irish keeping it for a third straight year, and I have the USC Trojans changing the tide. And what could be the final matchup between these two teams ever? But only we will know, only fate will know in about 24 hours. Other than that, I've been Jude. He's been Eric Lambkins, otherwise known as Elam. And we'll see you next week for Who's Right.